Welcome to the Global Discussion. Interesting discussions with creatives, leaders, and thinkers. Today is no exception to that. We're delighted to be joined by David Quinn. David, before we get into it, thanks for being on the show. Tell us a little bit about who you are and where you work.
Thanks for having me, Simon. Delighted to be on. My name is David Quinn. I am the founder, or one of the founders, and business director of Bloom Advertising. We are a creative and strategic agency that specializes in working with brands who are competitive. We'd be best known for our work for Brady Family Ham. We've worked with them since they were a small brand in North Kildare to becoming the biggest brand in the country today.
Yeah, fantastic. And I know a lot of people will know that brand for sure.
Yeah,
You're no stranger to the advertising world, David, but I
no,
want to begin with your journey a little bit because
yeah.
let's talk about Punchbag Theatre, the
The,
early days of treading the boards,
the,
maybe founding Bloom, as a
yes,
co-founder, and also you're touring with a modest proposal. What's
that's
all
right.
that
Yeah.
about? What's
How
going
does
on?
how does it all fit together? Well, it started many years ago. Um, I am originally from Galway, and on leaving college, when I went to college, I was very involved with the Drama Society. And back then, in the late 1980s, in the last century, there was this sort of spirit in Galway at the time of can do. It was kind of a punk attitude. We can have a theatre, we can have a band. And the town at the time was kind of derelict, and people were, doing things in found spaces. So me and a couple of guys from friends from college set up a theatre company called Punchbag. We started putting on shows at the back of a pub, the King's Head. It's still used today for that purpose. And then eventually we ended up in our own venue, which was an old garage on a place called Key Lane, which is opposite the Spanish Arch, one of the sort of the Sparch, where all the young people go drinking today. And we converted this garage into a little theatre, and we ran it for, that would have been 91. I think we moved in there until 1997 when the Celtic Tiger came along and all the property prices went up and the landlord sold the building. So, but in the meantime, we were, we had great passion. Looking back on it now, we had great passion. We had great energy. We converted this building. It had an old mechanics pit in it. So we used to use the pit as like somebody going downstairs and coming up on the stage. We specialized in what we would be best known for is play. We like to do new writing, and we did a play. We did plays about issues that weren't known before, and the play that we were best known for was a play called Eclipsed. And in 1991, we got this play in from this woman who had been a retired school teacher. And prior to her working as a school teacher, she had been a novitiate nun. And during her time as a novitiate, she was sent to work in a Magdalene laundry. And at the time, now this is you couldn't make it up section from but it's true. Eamon Casey, the Bishop of Galway, was our patron. And and in this play about the Magdalene Laundry, the characters are preparing, which is itself was set in 1963. The characters are preparing the bishop's laundry for the bishop to go to the Vatican Council too in 1963. So we said, where would we get some bishop's laundry gear? So we turned to Eamon Casey. He said, sure, here you can have some of my gear. We had that on stage, and on the opening night, in the front row was Bishop Casey and the former president of about 2 weeks ago, Michael D. Higgins. And it got a great reaction, and nobody knew what a Magdalene Laundry was at the time. Bishop Casey was still in power. That's to show you what point this came along at. There was even a joke in the play where one of the girls wouldn't reveal who the father of her children were, and when she went off stage, the others speculated that it could have been a bishop. So that was February 92. In May 92, the story breaks about the bishop, and you could not have made it up. So from there on, anyway, the play then also brought We brought the play to Dublin to the Project Art Centre, the old project as it was at the time, an old industrial warehouse. I don't know if you remember it. And it while it was there, the Jerry Ryan show sent somebody to review it, and they went on the radio show the next day. We were getting a favor of somebody who worked in the Jerry Ryan show at the time, and they said, so Jerry said, "So what was this show about?" He said, "It's about a Magdalene Laundry." "What's a Magdalene Laundry?" "It's this." And then the switchboard lit up, and he had to dedicate the next couple of days to talking about Magdalene Laundries, and that was how this Magdalene Laundries went into the national. Anyway, I digress. After, so that's the play we were best known for. We won Edinburgh Fringe first. We toured it internationally. It was very rewarding thing to do, but also it was very emotionally draining on the people involved, as you can imagine. So we had a theatre in a found space, just like the way the old project was a found space, the way the old Temple Bar was found spaces, and it had a kind of magic to it. We did a lot of other plays about other issues like the emerging criminal scene, rave scene, the story of the Connacht Rangers, who were an Irish regiment of the British Army's mutiny in India in 1920. So there's all that sort of thing. So it was chaotic, but it wasn't lucrative. Didn't make any money. And unfortunately, we were in the same town as Druid, who are a very well-established theatre company. And no matter what we did, we were never going to get the same Arts Council backing because, we're only going to give so much money to Galway. And that's how politicians looked at things. So anyway, that all came to an end. And also one of our most famous alumni was Tommy Tiernan. Tommy was started with us as an actor. He in a lot of his interviews, he says he was doing nothing in Galway before he became a comedian, but he actually was training to become an actor, and he's actually a very skilled and talented actor. You've seen him in Derry Girls, you've seen him in Conversations with Friends, other things where he plays straight roles. And then at that time, he started to develop his own stand-up comedy, and he's gone on to be so that's my claim to fame.
Very good. Well, listen, thanks for taking us through that, David, because it's interesting. I mean, you touched on the Magdalene Laundries there. I mean, there's been movies since, and it all came out in the news. It was big news, and there still is. For our international audience watching or listening to us, I mean, the Magdalene Laundries. You've only got to Google it if you want some information. Also known as the Magdalene asylums. I mean, I think there was, I don't know, 5,000-10,000 women sort of forced labor. Right. I mean, this wasn't a pretty story.
No.
This was
kind of like a moral prison
time.
camp.
Yeah,
for women who had sinned. Yeah.
But great to hear how the theatre came about, and you're linked to Tommy Tiernan. I want to come back to Tommy Tiernan, who's a TV host and an acclaimed comic in his own right, amongst other things. But I wanted to ask you about Bloom as well, because you mentioned you're a co-founder there, but it's a well-respected agency. You mentioned Brady's as well, which is a very well-known brand in Ireland, and I'm sure elsewhere at this stage. But what do you think has been sort of the core that's kept the agency thriving now for 2 decades or more?
Well, so the year was the year 2000.
Wow.
Well, I moved to Dublin after the theatre closed. I worked in other jobs for a while, and then I decided I'd like to get involved in something that was a bit more creative but lucrative, something that made some money rather than the theatre. So got involved in that, got a job with an advertising agency called Bell Advertising. They're long gone now. And there I met another guy called Damien Penko, and we both left Bell at the same time and started freelancing. We went for a pitch, an e-tender at the time. It was a euro changeover. Of course, we weren't going to get it. We were only two creatives. We didn't get the job. We went into him and said, "We loved your idea, but," we said, "Well, why didn't you give us a job?" "Well, you're not an agency." So we decided to go and form an agency. And then it was like a summer's day. Once we that decision made, then it came to, well, I suppose we have to go for a pint now to celebrate it. And then the thorny question arose of, what will we call this agency? And I noticed it was a summer's evening. We were outside Davy Byrne's, we're having a pint, and there was a lot of people dressed in Edwardian gear. And it turned out to be Bloomsday. And I had read I tried to read Ulysses. I've tried a couple of times. And Leopold Bloom, the central character in Bloomsday, in Ulysses, for whom Bloomsday is a celebration of, his profession, I don't know if you know this, is he's an advertising salesman. So he's perhaps Ireland's most famous advertising professional, even though he's a fictitious character. What about the name Bloom? So that's how it started. So yeah, look, over the years we've worked with a wide range of clients, from the private sector, Brady's, Just Eat, Citron, Dubliner Cheese, West Coast Cooler, the Labour Party. Now they're I'll come back to them in a moment. And then a lot of public sector clients like the Register for Electors, CUSC, TU Dublin, and so on. So we, like all of our Irish ad agencies, we have wide experience. We've always tended to work, though, with challenger or brands that are competing, that brands that are not the number one or two in the marketplace. And over time, what we have noticed is that every sector, and if you think about this, I could show you a lot of slides on this. Every sector tends to speak with the same voice. Like if you look at hotels, most hotel advertising will feature, somebody getting a hot stone massage or somebody clinking glasses. Most car advertising is a car and a road, and most betting advertising is they all have their tropes, and all of the competing brands communicate the same message, right? So what they're actually doing is advertising the sector. Recently I went on to all of the banks' websites, to the mortgage sections, and each one of them, I kid you not, has a couple sitting on a couch. So everybody except for the market leader is actually promoting the market leader through misattribution. Because when the public see it, they're not paying as much attention to it as we are, or the marketing managers are. They're just, it's an ephemeral thing. It's passing them by in a moment, particularly now as a lot of things are digital. It's, and they see, oh, there's an ad for a mortgage company. It must be AIB's new ad. And they misattribute it to AIB. So we have our philosophy. So for instance, we applied this to Brady's, was for you to talk about yourself, promote yourself, your brand, not the sector. So ham ads were dominated. The ham market was dominated by a couple of very big brands like Denny and Shaw and Carl's, and they were all doing the same thing. So we came along and just talked about what made Brady different, and did it in a way, in a tone of voice that would never be mistaken as a Denny ad, for instance. So that I think this is a colossal failure of the imagination in the Irish marketing scene at the moment. That if you look at whatever sector, most of the brands speak with the same voice. And in fact, the competitor brands, it's worse than wasting your money. You're actually spending your money to promote the brand leader. So like it's even worse. Do you know what I mean? Like if you did nothing, then you're not spending money promoting them. But if you're doing the same thing,
it's a great point.
It's
a great
bizarre.
point. I mean, I can't tell you how many people, David, that I speak to say, geez, that was a great ad, but I've no idea who the company was. I couldn't tell you. There's no brand recall. And what you've done and what you're explaining there is it's unmistakable who the company is.
Yes.
And it lands with people.
Yeah.
And it's done in that tone and style that's unique to that brand. So it stands out and it gets cut through in a world of sameness and misattribution and copycat style advertising, I suppose.
Misattribution is a huge problem in this sector. And there is millions been in the Irish market alone, which is a small market, been wasted on it. And it baffles me sometimes.
Very good. Well, in terms, I want to ask you a follow-on question if I can, because
sure.
You started talking originally about how yourself and another gentleman, two sort of creatives working
Yeah,
together without an agency name, even at that stage, until Bloomsday sort of came along.
yeah,
But you've worn both hats. Obviously, you're copywriter in top
yeah,
agencies, you're artistic director on a stage. Is there any sort of path we can tread between the two, like the disciplines of theatre and advertising? Do they
yeah.
inform each other at all in your work, David?
Well, so well, yes. I mean, I love big ideas, and I like to think that the theatrical work that we did was driven by big ideas. And so is advertising. You know, some of the great campaigns have a big idea, simple idea, people get it, you communicate, you connect, you change behavior, you change a brand's outcome, you move an audience in a theater. Also, the actual work of advertising, I always thought was quite, and theater were quite similar in that they were both ephemeral, in that they were on for a while and then they were gone. And if you saw, you know, if you see a theater show live, it's in your memory and then it's gone. And same thing with an ad. Ad campaigns last for a while and they're gone again. You know, so there's that degree of turnover and on to the next campaign, the next idea. And thirdly, sorry, that was the third point. Um, the the act of pitching, you know, which is all the agencies do, be it creative, strategy, or media, where they bring a client into a room and they sell them. They stand up in front of a screen like the one that's behind me here, and they pitch an idea. That's inherently theatrical as well, because I've been in lots of rooms where an idea just, oh, geez, and it lifts and it changes, and you were there the moment when idea was born, and then you've seen it go out into the world, and you've seen it change a fortune. Um, or I've seen them bomb, you know, or just get like stony cold silences, and that's kind of like a microcosm of a theater performance. Like it's like a stand-up comedian, I suppose. So some of the pitches are being funny though, you know. So that's that. They're the parallels. So big ideas, I think, has driven me all through my career.
Well, that's great. Thanks for explaining that. I mean, that's good to understand. And I suppose coming back to big ideas, let's talk about a modest proposal, if we
Right.
can. I mentioned it right at the top, but
Yeah.
you're currently touring again through
I'm,
Ireland, right?
that's right. Yeah. Yeah.
So
So
what inspires the story? How does this reflect some of the themes or challenges that
yeah.
you've observed? What is a modest proposal? Help our audience understand.
Okay. So just let me talk to you a little bit about what inspired it.
Hmm.
So another thing that I like about advertising and about the theatrical work was that you were in touch with the Irish society. You have to you have to sell, advertise to people today. So the homelessness is it drives me it's the idea for the play comes from a place of rage and anger at walking down the street and stepping over homeless people, and the numbers, and as Ireland becomes wealthier and wealthier, the number of homeless people goes up and up and up. So I was always, when I was in the theatre business, I was sorry, the advertising business. I always kept an interest in the theatre and was scribbling away ideas in the background. And one day I went on a tour of St. Patrick's Cathedral in Dublin, and if you haven't done it, I'd highly recommend it. And as part of the tour guide brought Jonathan Swift, who was the Dean of St. Patrick's Cathedral, to life. And Swift wrote the original Modest Proposal, which was a pamphlet, a 9-page long pamphlet that he published in 1729, coming from the same place of rage, because his audience, his congregation, were the wealthy of Dublin, but right across the road were the Liberties, which was the slums and the poor of Dublin, and they were literally cheek by jowl. And I read the Modest Proposal when I was in college, the original one, and it always stuck with me. So I thought, what would I do today? And I took a version of this and I mixed it with my advertising career. And I might imagined that an agency, a strategic agency, was hired by a government department called the Social Strategic Improvement Unit to tackle the problem of child poverty in Ireland today. And then he comes up with the Swiftian proposal. Do you know the story? Do you know what that proposal is?
No, I'm not. I'm not as familiar with it.
Okay,
No, I
it's
know. I know about St. Patrick's Cathedral. I knew about the
yeah.
modest proposal
So
history, but I'm not familiar with that aspect. So please expand on
so
that.
Swift
Yeah.
wrote a modest proposal in which he proposes in the language, a very modest, rational language of
Hmm.
an economist, like you might imagine an economist on the radio today. He proposes that the poor should sell their children to the rich who would eat it as meat, as food. So I just take that idea and then you give the whole branding, positioning, look, what it says about you. Here's the ad, here's the product, how it tests, all of those things, all the benefits, like you would in a contemporary strategy pitch today, and put them all together. Made a show. Now, ironic, I wrote my first draft of this show, wrote it in 2017, which is 8 years ago now. And it didn't get picked up until about 2019, 2020, and then the pandemic hit, then it got delayed. So the tragedy, so the first third of the plays, like all good strategists at a pitch, what's life like for somebody, a child living in poverty in Ireland today? So all the figures are real, they're and the tragedy has been that in every year I've had to update the figures. And in 2017, it was 726 children in homelessness, homeless children. Don't know if you've saw the reports recently, it's 5,268.
Yeah.
It's gone up every year. And then at the same time, Ireland's wealth has gone up as well. So now we're the fourth wealthiest country in the world. So what's going wrong? Now I know, that's a modest proposal.
Well, I mean, it's another big topic, isn't it? I mean, it's a big
Yeah.
story, and it's interesting how you've kind of brought something from way back when into sort of more modern times, and
Yeah.
the figures unfortunately keep growing, right? I,
Yeah.
I was only reading, I think they actually came out not too long ago, again, the latest updated numbers,
That's right, they did,
and
yeah.
they're shocking.
Yeah,
And
they're shocking. But
yeah,
you walk through town, there's people sitting all over on streets begging, and once upon a time, the word is, now we've just become so inured to it. So I use this. We've been angry. We've been on protests. We've raised money. We've heckled politicians. We have. So this is a satire, a savage satire approach to it, and it's got a great reaction. There's two types of audiences who know the original Swift one and like the take on it, and then there's others who have no idea what they're going to see, and they go, Jesus, you're one sick motherfucker. I censored that word, the last word, but
well, I
um,
wanted to come back to Tommy Tiernan because I know you
yeah,
had a post-show
yeah,
conversation with Tommy
that's
Tiernan,
right. Yeah,
who's a big name,
he
right? And
is.
obviously, you had this conversation in Galway thing, and
Yeah,
it sounded like, because I've seen a little bit of it, it sounded like a very special moment. So, is there anything that stood out from that? Did it have a particular meaning for you? And that public dialogue between yourself and Tommy, does that help shape the way the work is ultimately received? Does it help? Must do.
I mean, yeah. I mean, Tommy's a big celebrity, so if he goes to something, he has a lot of followers. If he recommends something, all of that from a marketing side helps. But we are all friends. We go way back. So in another way, it was like two friends connecting. And in another way, it was like going to confession because he has this great ability to elicit things from you, and I end up saying things that I didn't think I would say. Um, and then in another way, it was like sitting on this on the set of his show as he interviewed you, and I thought he is good at it now. I mean, he's been at it for 9 or 10 years, so it was a special moment.
Yeah, I bet it was. And again, for our international audience who may not be as familiar with Tommy Tiernan's show, for example, so he's on the national state broadcaster with
Yeah,
a show, and it's fully improvised, his show, isn't it?
yeah,
So
prime slot.
he doesn't
Yeah,
know who the guests are. He doesn't know what their
yeah,
backstory is. He's only got what he knows when the moment he sees them.
yeah.
It's my understanding of it, and he does well at that.
That's right. And that's if he knows the person. So say a celebrity comes out and he might know the celebrity, might know who they are. And then if you notice, he generally never asks them. So like if a rugby player shows up, he'll never ask a rugby player about playing rugby. It'll all be about other stuff in their lives. Then there's about half of the guests, he just doesn't know them at all, you know. So he's like, "Who are you? Tell me your story." So it's got that the show, the format of the show's like got that wonderful sort of sense of authenticity and realness. Because you know a lot of the other shows, like say the other long running show, the Late Late Show, a lot of the guests are prepped. The interviewer knows who they are. There's a press release. You can only ask these questions,
There's a
and it
book
has
to
it.
sell. There's a
There's a book to
movie to
sell,
sell.
and
Yeah,
a movie to plug or something like that,
yeah,
and you know it's a little bit fake, you know, which is fine. That's the format of it, and we all go along with it. But Tommy's one is different because of that.
yeah. Very good. And look, talking a little bit about that sort of spontaneity and that being a little bit different with Tommy's show, it leads me nicely into my next question because I wanted to talk about the Irish advertising scene a little more because you touched on it earlier and that your approach to maybe some of the brands and the
Yeah,
style that you've taken with some of your customers over the years. But you've been at this for quite a while at this
yeah,
stage, David. So you must have seen some big shifts. You mentioned digital. We're in a world of AI now, of
yeah,
course. Everything's going past a blur of a speed.
yeah.
What shifts are you seeing? What are you talking to when you're talking to these brands and companies now when it comes to things like communication and building brand loyalty and cutting through in the digital age? Anything that's sort of hot topics for you at the moment?
Well, the hot topic is AI. You know, once upon a time there was the app meant artificial insemination. Now it's got a very different meaning. The AI man was a big man on rural Ireland and farms. So that's the big hot topic right now, and where that will land. Clients are always looking, many clients are always looking to try and get their investment in advertising done as cheaply as possible. So they think um, it's going to be a new tool that they're not going to have to spend as much money on producing advertising assets. But my jury is still out on it. I have there's a bit to me. There's a bit of a bang of when social media first appeared. You know, the early days of Facebook, it was going to get rid of advertising because brands were going to be able to communicate directly with their audiences, with the consumer. But that didn't happen really, and Facebook and others moved to just becoming to selling advertising. Now, of course, social media and influencers are very big, but that to me, that's another channel. It's like an outdoor channel. Video doesn't really work on it, and it's the rest of it is just PR influencers, which is just a version of PR. Now it's more democratic in that you don't have to go through the original, you know, or your RTEs, the gatekeepers. So it's made the most made it more democratic. I think the same challenges still exist. Um, Still building a big brand, still maintaining market share, still interrupting the shopper as they move through the supermarket. You know, um, AI might be able to automate some of the parts of the business, but I came into this business when the Apple Mac appeared, and it did away with it did away with all the typesetters and all those guys that had, you know. So AI is going to be the same thing. I have this story that I tell, right, which was, you know, the very first ad was the cave paintings from 35,000 years ago. You know, there was pictures of bison and hands and all that. I think they were the first ads. They were saying the bison's out there. So this one media, which is cave paintings, which became murals and outdoor posters, was around for a long time. They dominated the scene. Then along comes the printing press, and the printing press uh, publishes pamphlets, and pamphlets lead to newspapers. And the guys who own all of the outdoor poster sites at the time says, "Jesus, we're screwed now. This printing press means you can move your print around and put it in your pocket. That's the end of our business." And then it moves on a few hundred years till the arrival of cinema. and cinema arrives, and it's got moving pictures. And the guys and the print guys and the outdoor poster guys say, Jesus, we're screwed now. Except they didn't use a word beginning with F. And then the radio emerges, and the TV, cinema, and sorry, the cinema, outdoor and print guys go, we're screwed now. Television emerges, the radio, you can see where this is going. The outdoor posters are still with us. It doesn't disappear, it just changes.
And print's still with us, and books are
Print
still
is
with
still
us,
with
and
us.
radio's still with us, ads, yeah,
Yes.
in a big way.
Arguably the most, I would argue, the biggest media impact on the last 100 years is radio, because it turned things, made it immediate. And you know what? My great grandmother dealt with new media, which was the arrival of radio, and my grandmother dealt with, the arrival of television, and so generation after generation of Irish people have been dealing with new media, and then it fits into their lives and they carry on. But I know AI is something bigger than that. So my jury is still out on it.
Well, I like that take, and I like the story from cave paintings to AI. That's a great
Yeah.
title for a book, by the way.
There you are.
But no, I like that, and I like your position on it, because people at the moment, there's a cohort that are in full denial. There's others that are so gung ho about it, AI can do no wrong, and it's nice to get your perspective on it, right? And
Yeah.
particularly the story about there's always a new media advertising. It doesn't necessarily give us the huge disruption that we hear about every day in the press. And I wanted to ask you, because you're also a board member of the IAPI, right?
That's right, yeah.
IAPI, and I wanted to ask you about the role you think being a leader, particularly in the creative world, what role that plays, because we're trying to foster this dynamic, globally resonant, Irish advertising industry. So does that play a part? Because you got involved there as well, didn't you, at a board level?
Yeah, I did. I went for election this time last year, and I was lucky that enough people voted for me. Can you hear me? Is the line breaking up? It's
No, I can
okay.
hear you perfectly.
Okay, great.
I can hear you perfectly, David.
So the thing with IAPI is we are working at the moment to evolve the organization. I mean, for years, it's been a really successful members organization, but outside of that, it has had no real presence or clout. So we're working to turn it into an industry representative body. And IAPI, so there's a sector called the commercial creative sector. That's advertising, it's design, it's digital design, it's the film business. And we're working to IAPI, and then of those bodies, IAPI is the biggest body, and we're working at the moment to evolve IAPI so it has a role and a voice at government, right? And so, like for example, when the Irish Language Act was introduced about 3 or 4 years ago, which has had a big effect on how advertising is conducted. Now, personally, I support the Irish Language Act and what they set out to do. Nobody from the government rang IAPI and said, well, before we publish this, what do your members think of this? And it just happened. So IAPI had no clout. In the future, we don't want that. Is not going to happen. If there's another piece of legislation, we will be actively involved in shaping that legislation. Like we'll say the hoteliers are on any legislation to do with tourism, or farmers are, right? Legislation, they're an active representative body. So that's where we're heading. That's where we're going with IAPI. And of course, part of that will be to build the Irish advertising's reputation internationally. I mean, we actually have, I think we're kind of pushing an open door, because we punch well above our weight, to use that old expression, in the arts world. Like the biggest rock band in the world is an Irish band. Oscar winning actors and so on. Yeah, I don't need to sell you all that, but that it's so it is credible for a strong commercially creative business to come out of Ireland. It's not as if we're a country that didn't have that reputation, then it would be different. So yeah, watch this space.
100%. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, it's a huge success story. Yeah.
Yeah, watch this space. I think we will see the way in which people talk about the Irish advertising business change. And for example, Film Ireland and Screen have done a great job of that. They promote the business, they have their tax breaks, they have their employment legislation, and then they're on the radio saying, and they're able to give the stats about how many people are employed, how many productions are underway, and then how many Oscar nominations. So, okay, now our advertising is not the same thing. I do appreciate that, but we know Irish ads. We see them on television every day, and we see them online. And people say, "Oh, geez, this ad won at Cannes, which is the Oscars of Irish Oscars, the international Oscars for advertising." So, and I think we have had one of the greatest advertisers, because it takes a great advertiser to make great ads traditionally in this country, which was Guinness. And Guinness, I would argue, Guinness advertising is a really important part of the fabric of 20th century Irish history and Irish culture. So
I'm riding high with our own Netflix series at the moment, right?
Well, yeah, no, less said about that, the better, I think.
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
I've seen some of it, yeah, and but even like
that's enough.
The Guinness Storehouse and the way they've done it all,
for sure.
The Guinness story outside of what Netflix are doing, Guinness story is a phenomenal.
Absolutely, they were always a very, very inventive and creative company. They embraced things well ahead of every other organization, and they were one, first embraces of proper modern advertising.
Yeah, no, 100%. Well, it sounds like we have bigger things to see coming from IAPI or the IAPI.
Yeah, the current board are great. The new CEO of IAPI, Siobhan Masterson, is doing a great job. So you'll see that it's just about to come to market. I'd say next, give us another couple of weeks. You'll hear all about it.
Exciting times.
Yeah, and then obviously that's our plan, but then we've got to see it go into action next year and the year after. So, and that IAPI
and dare I say, David, badly needed and great job that you're there. So thanks.
Yes, for sure, absolutely. And now that I'm at this part of my career, I am happy to do that. And I want to make this a strong industry going forward.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, look, we're kind of coming to the end here, and I want to squeeze in one more question if I can.
Yeah, sure.
So I want to take you back to being a young creative for a minute. So imagine you bump into some young creatives. They want to get into the ad game. They're trying to craft work that maybe lands with people. They're trying to get a break. What advice would you give somebody today when they're looking at the creative side of business, getting into marketing, getting into advertising? Any advice? Would it be steer clear, run for the hills, or have you got any other advice you'd share with them, David?
No, I mean, I think for people who are proper creatives, it's a deep down itch, and it's something they have to do, and they have to itch it. And I would encourage them to go for it. I would encourage them to look at the great ads, look at, dig them out. They're online and on online archives. Look at what made them great. To study this like it is a proper career. I mean, it is a proper career. It's been around 100 years. It's got practices, it's got successes, it's got failures, but learn your craft and learn from the past. And my ultimate test, to go back to my story about the different media, is if you have a great idea, if you can express it in an outdoor poster, it'll work. So try your idea in an outdoor poster first. 5 words, 1 image, 1 logo. If you can make it work on that, then you've got a great idea.
Love it. Love it. Great point to end on. David, if people want to get in touch, they want to find out about Bloom, all the great work you do, they want to find out more about all the exciting news coming out of IAPI, they want to catch up on the modest proposal, where do you want to send or point people to?
So you can go to the Bloom website, which is bloom.ie. IAPI is IAPI.ie. The IAPI website is still reflects the IAPI at the moment, and hasn't. The new, we have to have a board AGM next week to put it to the members. And then you can follow me. I'm on LinkedIn, and I'd welcome your connection. I'd make connections with everybody because that's my philosophy. You never know what one person will lead to another person, or what one person might have. So LinkedIn would be where to get me. David Quinn on LinkedIn.
That's great. David Quinn on LinkedIn. That's great. So we've got a LinkedIn connection. You can reach out and connect, find out about all that's going on, and a couple of web addresses there as well.
Oh, yeah. And you can email me at david@bloom.ie.
Even better. Even
Yeah.
better. Well, look, that sadly brings us to the end of our time together today here on the Global Discussion, David. I'm going to thank everybody who's watching or listening to our discussion around the world. And I'm going to ask them to follow, like, subscribe, do everything I need them to do to help support the Global Discussion. Go and check out all the great work that you're doing. And thank you for joining me on the podcast show today. And hopefully people will join me back here for some more discussions with creatives and leaders and thinkers just like Dave. But Dave, it's been great to talk to you today.
Thanks, Simon. Great talking to you. I really enjoyed it.
My pleasure.